Hello everyone and welcome to my crib. This is my office out in Wales. This is where I spend 8-9 hours a day slaving away to the man, doing my best to make sales for Gartner. And yeah, this is going to be my first vlog of the Adventure Antidote. My plan is to do one weekly or so that you guys can keep up with what we're doing, our progress, and also for myself, like I really want to be able to look back on the journey. So yeah, here it is. Today, I am gonna do a week update for us, but I'm gonna kind of do a couple of other bits as well. I want to talk about the inspiration, because I think there's a bit more to add on what brought us here today that people aren't aware of. If anything, it kind of come out of the blue for most people because I kept it kind of secret. And then I'm going to talk about the row itself. I want to talk about the costs, the training, and is it dangerous? Because that's what I've been asked quite a lot. So I'm going to try and keep this to under 15 minutes. I'll probably fail. So number one, the inspiration for the row itself. About 6 or 7 years ago, I used to work for a company called Converter. Shout out to the Converter Massive. And I used to sit next to a guy called Sam Walker. He was their sales manager back then, and one of my mentors. He told me about his friend who rode across the Atlantic, and it was part of what's called the Talisker Whiskey Atlantic Challenge. And a lot of you might not have heard of that, but if you look it up, it's a row that happens every year in around December, and they go from the Canary Islands, I think it is, to Antigua, and it's effectively it's a race. You can go in groups, you can go solo, 2s, 3s, 4s, I think that is it. I remember looking at it at the time, and I was so pumped and excited, fired up to see all of these different things. And people doing it, talking about seeing sharks and seeing whales and seeing orcas and all sorts of stuff happening out there. It just looks like an insane journey. But I actually kind of applied to it at the time because I wanted to see how I could get involved. And they were like, oh yeah, sure, the race entry fee is 20 something grand and the boat is this and then that. I was like, oh fuck. So that became a pipe dream for me, but that was still there in the back of my mind of that's something I really want to do one day. Lockdown happened a couple of years later. I'm sure you'll remember that. Part of lockdown, two important things I think happened. Number one, me and Mike were on the phone loads being when this is done, let's go do some crazy stuff climb a mountain, or let's just go get a couple of bikes and do a massive tour of France or something. What could we do that would be outdoors, that would be hard, that would be fun? So we went through a load of these things, and one of the things we did say was we do the Matterhorn, because it's a big mountain and it's iconic and it's a challenge. It's quite nearby, but it's also it's probably just at the limit of you don't need to be massively specialized. I mean, it depends which route you take, right? The North Face is pretty famous for being one of the hardest things you can do, but the Hornley Ridge that we're going to go up isn't. 3,000 or so people a year go up that. But again, it's not to be taken lightly. It's still going to be difficult. We are going to have to train for it, but it just seems doable without being a mountaineer that's dedicated your life to it. Do you know what I mean? So there's a couple things. Then we returned to work, and I'd lived in London for 8 years or so before lockdown, and then afterwards and during a little bit, I just sort of realised there was quite nice stuff to do in the UK that was outside of London. I think I was in the London-centric bubble before then, just what would be better than this? And I love the place still, but I've fallen in love with being outdoors and that kind of stuff outside of the city. So all these dominoes start going into place. I now live in Wales. I'm looking at doing this marathon in Norway, and I end up having a conversation with somebody at Gartner actually, whose friend Jamie from Nothing Ventured had done the Atlantic Challenge, And again, just because it was something I've always wanted to do, I ended up getting in contact with the guy and I hear about his story. Again, like super excited about it. And he introduced me to someone else who did it without entering the race. And it all just started to make me feel like it was totally possible to do again this time around. So the guys, well, the race seemed like the thing that was really difficult to enter because the entry fee was so large. And also they're like booked up until like December 2026, which is effectively 2027. So it's like nearly 4 years away. I suppose 3 years away, which just seems ages. So I ended up speaking to the guy from a company called Rannoch, who they manufacture the boats, and they're pretty much the gold standard of boats worldwide. I don't think anybody else really does them to the same level, and anyone who does do ocean rowing pretty much buys their boats through Rannoch. They are expensive, but they're the best, and if you get in trouble, like, you want to be in a Rannoch basically. So I get talking to Charlie, who is the founder of the company, and he's an ocean rower himself, and I, like, bless him, he gave me loads of time. He talked to me about the different types of rows I could do: the Atlantic, the Pacific. You can do one from like Canada that comes all the way down and it's quite icy, you finish in Ireland, or you can do the Indian Ocean. And he said the cool thing, I know I'll save that bit for later actually. So I think that's enough for like inspiration. That has been building up for a long time. And then after those conversations, I was like, holy shit, this is like possible. We start talking to a charity, and just from talking to one person, another person, not really thinking like, when am I going to launch this? I just wanted to find out a little bit more and do the next thing. And then all of a sudden we're in a position where we're linked with a charity that we want to raise for, and they're going to support us. We've created a campaign and a brand, and we have a message that we think is important and that we believe in, and yeah, we're like good to go. And all of a sudden it's like, wow, we're going to launch this stuff. And so I suppose that kind of takes us on to week one. You know, we launch last Sunday, and since then, what have I done? So, you know, I set us up on all of the socials. This chair's creaking out, I know you can hear it on the microphone, so I'm trying to sit a bit more still. I launch it on all the socials, which is like the Just Giving page, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, and YouTube. And this will probably be the biggest thing I put on YouTube for now. But I think, like, in comparison to the actual challenges, one of the things I felt more difficult about is actually posting this stuff and putting it out there. I mean, I enjoy being the center of attention in a lot of ways, but I don't know, it feels different in this sense. I don't know why. I suppose I feel like I've got to open up a little bit more and do things I'm less comfortable doing and posting. So yeah, that stuff feels difficult. Since actually launching and trying to raise money, asking for money is really hard. And you know, I work in sales. I'm used to asking for money for companies, but I'm kind of doing it for my company, and there's like a value exchange. Whereas like when we're doing this, you know, it just feels weird because I'm asking almost personally, but I am asking for the cause. So hopefully people believe in that. But yeah, it just does feel like a tough thing to do, to message people and say, hey, can you donate? And eventually, I've had a couple of conversations already, but I've got to get donations from and sponsorships from companies as well. So I know it's not going to be easy to do. Where are we at so far? We've raised £3,370 through Just Giving, and my nan, bless her, has let me know that I've got £250 check coming by carrier pigeon, so I'm sure that will arrive in the next 6 weeks, and I'll add that to the campaign as well. So we're at like 3,600. A good little bonus here is that my company Gartner have a donation matching scheme, and that's why we set up as crowdfunding on Just Giving. So I can withdraw that money, and then I can donate it through the company and they'll match it. So that 3,600 is actually 7,200. So massive appreciation for everybody that's donated so far, and that makes a huge dent in our campaign. To have raised like £7,200 effectively in a week is huge. I suppose that the fear is that, like, at first we've got these donations from the people that are like closest to us, and it then becomes harder to get the donations from people who know us less, I guess. So I think that kind of is enough for this week. I suppose, apart from training, right? The first thing, we've got like 5 months until we run a marathon on ice. I'm not too afraid about the ability to do that. I wasn't very well this week, so naturally I did what any normal person would have done, and is ate chocolate, led on the sofa, did some internet shopping, bought a Whoop and some other stuff to motivate me when I feel better. But I had trained a couple of times this week. I did go for a run yesterday. I did about 10k, and I've been to the gym today. So yeah, I'm getting back into the swing of things, but got a lot of training to do for all of these challenges in general. And now I'll talk about the row. So the first thing is, people have been saying, like, because we're trying to set a record by doing this row, people are saying, isn't the fact that no one's done this row before a bit of a red flag? And maybe, but the ocean rowing in general is more common than people know. And if you check out that Talisker Whiskey Atlantic Challenge, you'll see how many people do row an ocean every year. People row other oceans and they do it without being in that race. And a lot of people have actually rowed the Indian Ocean before, but there's just a little loophole technicality we're using here, in that a lot of people go from Australia and finish in Mauritius. And we're just putting on that extra part to finish in mainland Africa, which will actually make us the first pair to do it. And when I say that little extra part, it's 1,000 kilometers or so. So it's not small, but if we've already done 7,500, kind of like, what's the extra 10 days to set a record? Like, definitely well worth it. Ironic if it's that little bit that finishes us off. But that won't happen, Mum, don't worry. So, like, what is it dangerous? I think that, like many adventure sports, they are dangerous if you don't take the precautions. And I'm kind of speaking like out my arse a little bit here, because I don't know what the precautions are, because I haven't started the training yet. But I've had plenty of conversations with people who have rowed oceans, and the guys who run the boat company, they manufacture the boats, and they have had lots of conversations with me about the type of training we would need to do and how we can be prepared. And ultimately, if we prepare correctly, then we will be prepared for storms. We will be prepared and have communications and things like that. So we do everything we can to minimize the dangers, and then ultimately it just becomes like sticking to it. And hopefully I'll be able to add a little bit more flavour to that when we start actually training for the row. But yeah, don't worry about us. Now I'm going to talk about the costs, and hopefully I'm going to be able to add a little spreadsheet somewhere there or there, which you guys can see, and that is a big number at the bottom. So I'm going to talk you through this. There are some bits highlighted in green, and then there's the stuff that's in white. The green stuff is what I would consider an asset. So when we get back from the row, hopefully we'll still have those things, unless stuff really goes tits up. The stuff in white, like, they are services or they are food that will be consumed, so we won't have that at the end of it, and it has no value once we've used it, basically. So when we look at like the whole costs, there are kind of those two elements, and the boat is by far like the biggest of the expenses. So when we look at that, the boat the safety equipment, satellite communications, medical kit, foul weather clothing, that all adds up to about 100 grand. And when we're done, we will actually be able to sell that stuff, and a lot of it will hold its value. So the boat especially, you know, we won't be able to sell it for exactly what we bought it for, but a good percentage. And I'm thinking around, like, based on the conversations I've had with people who've been through this process, you know, like 75, 80%. And then the plan is we donate that money to the charity. So for clarity, the first two events, the run and the Matterhorn and the climb, have been paid for by us. So no money is going towards that. The money that we raise does go towards this, and then anything that we sell afterwards will be then redonated to the charity. So there's about 30k of investment there that, you know, we have to pay for, that we won't get back. So food, we're going to eat it. The RYA course, which is a qualification we need to be able to survive at sea. The coaching, shipping our boat from the UK to Australia, picking it back up from Tanzania, costs quite a considerable amount. And then, you know, we need insurance and we need shore support. So when we're actually on the boat, we will be able to read the weather when we're on the boat, but we want people on shore double checking for us and helping, giving us guidance, because we'll spend a lot of our time rowing. We might be tired, and we want to make sure that we don't miss anything, and that ultimately just keeps us safe too, to keep people updated. So hopefully that gives you a little bit more information about, you know, what got us here so far, how the week has gone this week, and like the row that people have asked a lot of questions about. I hope it gives you a little more confidence that we're not completely crazy, although it is still a little bit crazy. I'm really excited for the whole journey. Like, it's going to be difficult to get us to the start line of the row, because we need to raise so much money to do that. But, you know, I'm excited for the whole journey from here to the start line, and then from the start line to Tanzania. I'm excited for it all, super pumped, and, you know, really pleased to share the message that, you know, getting outside, seeking adventure is a really good way to improve your mental health, your physical health, and you get to see how green and beautiful the world still is today. And by doing that, it will reduce your anxiety about the environment. It might inspire you to go and do more things to protect the environment, which I think is necessary. But by no means do I think that the world is completely screwed in the way that the news makes it out to be. So yeah, guys, I hope you liked the first vlog video, and look forward to keeping you updated with the next. Bye.